welcome back to My Quilty Neighborhood podcast. And here's my bestie, Dawn. We've actually had a couple of weeks off here, so we're back. I know, and she's been doing I don't know what else. So why don't we play catch up first, and you can tell a little bit of what's happening in Dawn's world.
Okay, well, I work for Moda. So Moda is in Dallas, Texas, and I've been there for about a little over 3 weeks. We had a big retreat for shop owners, so we spent a lot of time schmoozing with shop owners and
that was fun.
Showing them a good time, but also teaching them a lot about their business and how maybe they could rethink a few things. And so, and we were teaching classes and doing make it and take it and all kinds of fun stuff.
So promoting Moda's products and showing the shop owners how best to do that.
Yeah, they got to see the new lines before the salesman did. That was a thrill. So.
Wow, before the salesman? That's pretty.
Don't tell any of the salesmen.
No,
okay?
I just mean that's like really, that's really.
Yeah, we won't see these fabrics
a
for
really good preview.
Months.
Yeah, because the way that works is, what they're buying now is stuff that's going to be coming in later in the fall or actually more in January, February. So the new spring lines. So that's So wow, that was
fun
a good
stuff.
preview.
Yeah.
Cool.
So 3 weeks in Texas, it stormed a lot, but we were inside, so we didn't care.
That's good.
Yeah.
You didn't have any of those. Sometimes those storms in Texas,
I know,
the Gulf or whatever, can really be bad.
The hail. The hail was very scary.
I bet.
I mean, it sometimes is softball size.
Wow.
I know.
We get hail
We didn't
here.
get that. We didn't get that while I was there. We did get some that was quarter size.
Okay.
But it can be dangerous, pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
So.
We get tornadoes in Indiana, so we get hail as well. But hardly, here where I live, hardly ever bigger than pea size.
Yeah.
But a softball size, that's just wow. I mean, conk on the head.
Yeah.
That's dangerous stuff.
You have to carry bigger insurance because of your roof. If you're driving, your windshield gets busted. I mean, it's just really very, very serious stuff. But, so much for serious. Let's have fun, okay?
But you're back.
I'm back.
That's what I want.
Yay! We've had lunch.
Yeah.
And you're up to a lot of things. Tell us about what you're up to.
Well, kind of behind me, I just finished up the Broken Road QAL.
That's this one? Oh, that's
yeah,
actually both of them.
Yeah.
Oh, they look so different with the different colors, don't they?
I know, thank you. They do. And I've got another version here. This version is featuring my first Island Boutique collection called Reflections. So I just had a whole month-long celebration for that with lots of giveaways and stuff.
Oh, fun.
And then just finished up the quilt-along and waiting for people to finish their quilts and then enter them for prizes.
Wow.
So we're in that little transition phase. But as far as finishing up, I'm done with all the teaching, all the videos. So they know everything they need to know to put it all together.
Awesome.
And I've been seeing some really pretty versions up on... it's so exciting when you're a designer to see other people take your pattern and put it into their fabrics. Yeah. Oh, it's been so exciting.
Good.
I love it.
Good.
So that's what I've been doing. That's
Is it
my
too
story.
late to do the sew along?
No,
or the
as a matter of
along?
fact, it closes August 7th. So I'm not sure when this particular video will be posted, but if it's posted before then, I'll put a link in the description so that you can sign up for the newsletter and get a discount on the pattern.
Okay.
Yeah, and then just rush to make it. As you can see, it comes in two sizes. There's the larger size that has lap, double, and queen, and then the smaller size, which comes in wall, and then
of course, I like the little one, the baby one.
I think this one's the wall, and that's the baby is the slightly larger one, or whatever. Anyway, so
the baby can't be large.
Maybe this is the baby size.
Yeah.
Anyway, it comes in two sizes, and that's the Broken Road Mini.
Okay.
So it goes together really fast, and it includes instructions on how to cut it out using AccuQuilt if you happen to have an AccuQuilt. And oh my gosh, if you do that, it is so fast. Really, you could finish the top literally in like a day.
Really?
So
Wow.
yeah. So
Awesome.
depending on when this gets posted, you might still be able to enter. But if not, just watch for the fall, because I've got my second collection coming out this fall, and I'll be doing another month-long celebration when it is released, and I can officially talk about it.
Yay!
And I'll have a different quilt along. So just sign up for the newsletter. I'll put a link in below, and
Awesome.
And you'll know when it starts. So
Yay!
That's what I've been up to.
And there'll be a link to the newsletter in this video?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
You could just
So
sign up and find out.
what are we doing today here in the neighborhood?
Well, in the neighborhood, I thought, since we have covered the basics, we've covered
Correct.
how to press correctly, we've covered how to cut your fabrics accurately,
Correct.
and then also how to sew accurately with a 1/4 inch, and all of that. Those are the basics that everybody has to master for quilting. So I thought the next thing should be, let's talk about block units.
Okay.
And share our favorite ways to make them.
Okay.
And some tips. And by a block unit, I mean the things that make up a block. So it might be flying geese. We'll talk about those today. Or it might be half square triangles. We'll talk about those today, or 1/4 square triangles.
Okay.
So we'll talk about all the common block units, and we'll share our favorite tips and tricks.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to do today.
What's our first block?
The first unit we're going to talk about is half square triangles.
Okay.
I mean, it's the most common that everybody uses. So
Yeah.
I am anxious to hear,
Almost-
how does Dawn make her half square triangles? What's her preferred method? And show us some tips.
Almost always there's a half square triangle in a quilt. I mean,
I
don't.
swear. It's
Yeah.
like the most common thing
Yeah.
that they have, period.
And like sometimes it's very overwhelming because they say make 6,000
oh, yeah.
half square triangles, you know.
No.
And then you go, you know, and it's just kind of like, do I really want to make this quilt? But I think I've got a way to make them fast and easy.
I'm going to stop you for a second because I skipped ahead.
Okay.
We brought show and tell.
Oh, we did.
To show what the units look like. So
Yeah.
I'm going to show mine.
Okay.
This is Broken Road. I kind of showed it before, but if you look here, these little things, it's a square, half of which is colored in and makes a triangle. So that's a half square triangle. And I'll put it down here so we can zoom in a little bit. Here, this is a half square triangle. So you can see the square.
So just kind of like
Yeah,
that.
there you go. You can see the square, and half of it is colored in, and that's why they call it a half square triangle.
Right, because it makes a square.
Now let's see. I can't wait to see the samples that you brought.
Okay, so
Oh my God.
this is my sample.
She doesn't do anything big.
No, and it's not pressed really good. I haven't given it a final press. It's not ready to go to the quilter yet. But anyway, this one is made up of lots of half square triangles. Look at this little bitty block.
That's so adorable.
And they're not done mass. I did them each individual just because I wanted the backgrounds to all be different.
And you wanted the fabrics to be different too, so there's lots of variety here. Very scrappy.
So I probably made maybe 4 or 6 at a time, you know. So there's probably 6 just like this in the quilt. But when you scramble it all up, it gives you lots of variety. And then there's a bigger one here.
Yes.
So this is a half square triangle quilt. These could have been half square triangles if I would have just had a seam right there and made them, but it was easier and less waste if I did them flying geese. So these actually are flying geese, but they could have very well easily been made up of 2 half square triangles.
Yeah, you could have made 2 of the same.
Right, but I would have had a seam right there, and that's time and more fabric. So I chose to do flying geese on that. But anyway, I think this one is a really good example of when you pick up a pattern and it says make, 470 half square triangles that measure an inch finished. That to me is yumminess, but to some people it's very overwhelming. So what I do when I get a pattern that says that, I get out my Thangles. Now Thangles
This out of the way.
are a product that come packaged like this. They're a paper, And some people get confused about foundation piecing and paper piecing. This is foundation piecing because you use the paper as a foundation. And this number 2 right here is, this will finish at 2 inches. That means when it's sewn into the quilt, it'll be 2 inches. So if I use this paper, I'm going to get 2-inch finished. If I use this paper, I get 1.5-inch finished. You can see they're smaller. And then over here is a 2.25-inch finished. And then you can also buy them. They come in all kinds of configurations, but this is a square one. Can you see that? Yeah. This is a square one, and you just follow these little arrows. You put 2 fabrics together, 2 contrasting fabrics together, follow the lines, and voila. So I've got some little step outs here. I started out with 2 contrasting fabrics.
I love those fabrics.
Yeah, I brought this. This is Ruby Star.
Purple and
orange, peach,
yeah,
whatever.
Orange, yeah. Oh.
Okay, so there's that. And I never measure. When I do this. I just kind of fold it in half like this to fit my Thangle. Make sure it lays flat. And what I do is I take my Thangle and I just lay it on one side. If this isn't a straight edge, I kind of make sure I have all the fabric inside there. There's like a straight edge right there. And then I just take my ruler and I measure 1/2 inch away. Do you have a ruler there? So like if this was a ruler, I'd just go 1/2 inch away if it was long enough. I'll use this one. If it was long enough, then I would just cut. And I don't have to be real accurate. But in the instructions, it says to cut it exactly the width of the Thangle. If you do that, you're going to be disappointed because this could shift in sewing. See how easy that could shift, even if I have it pinned. And I'm a pinner, so, I would probably pin it. But just to give myself some insurance, I'm going to cut it bigger than the actual Thangle. So you can see here, I'm going to line up one edge.
And you've got right sides together.
And I do have right sides together because I want my Thangles, my half square triangles to come out good. And then I'm just going to put this down. And I might pin here and pin here. Okay. And then I'll start sewing in the middle. And when I sew, I always lower my stitch length to 1.5. Because I want it to perforate this paper, and it's easier to stay on the line if the stitches are little bitty bites instead of big chunky bites.
And there's so many lines here. Which lines are you sewing on?
So you can see there are dotted lines and there are solid lines. The dotted lines are the sewing lines. The solid lines are the cutting lines. So there's no cutting until you get them sewn. So that's what makes them kind of accurate because you're sewing all that bias before you cut it.
It's telling you exactly where to sew.
Exactly.
So it's exactly 1/4 inch.
Exactly. So now, once I have that done, I sew. And if I have to make 20 of these, there's 6 to a strip. So if I have to, what's 20 times 6? 120? 120 of these, then I will get all of them prepared. And then I will just chain piece them through the machine. I will just start here. I always start in the middle, and I'll just chain piece them one after the other after the other. And then I'll cut them all apart and go back and do the next line through the middle. I work from the middle out. But you can see I had this straight on here when I had it pinned. It still shifted on me. But because I had extra fabric, then I didn't have to worry about it. See that? The next step is that you want to trim. Now, this is probably the one thing that people forget. They just want to start getting the half square triangles made. So they just start cutting
apart
this and this and this and this. You've got to trim first, and you trim all the way around all 4 edges.
So you're trimming along the edge.
Yes, you're getting rid of all the fabric that you can see. You can see here, you can't see any of the fabric.
Gotcha.
So you're going to trim all that fabric away. And then once you do, then you can start trimming them apart from each other. And there's a little line right there for you to, with your rotary cutter, just slice them all apart. Then once you have them sliced all apart, they look like this. And then you have this one little dog ear that you're going to just with your rotary cutter go through and slice off. And then to tear the paper off, I take my thumb, I put it right here. I take my finger and my thumb, and I just rip from the middle, and that
Wow, that came right off.
It takes the paper right off. Then I'm going to take it, and I'm going to press it open with my clapper that we've talked about before, and I get a beautiful half square triangle. Now, I would have clipped that off before I would have gotten it here. So this is what it would actually look like when it's completed.
Perfect.
And in a matter of less than 5 minutes, I can have 120 of these done like whippity
And
stick.
all of them are accurate. So
They're-
like in that thing you just showed us where it's 1 inch, do they
Right.
sell like the finished 1 inch Thangles?
Finished from a 1/2 inch all the way up to 6 inch. Wow. Yeah, so they pretty much have it covered.
So you just get the right one.
Yeah.
And you can make a million of them. It's no problem.
And let's say maybe you need an odd number. You don't, that it's not divisible by 6 because it comes in a sheet of 6. You can always just cut off, and here's 4. And then if you cut 1, there's 2. But if I'm going to just make 2 of a half square triangle, I'm not going to worry about all this with the paper and everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to oversize my 2 squares. Here are my 2 squares, put them right sides together, draw a line through the middle, or if I have something on my sewing machine that guides me and I don't have to draw that line, I would not draw the line because I have one of those things. But if you do need to draw the line,
you can.
Yeah, this
That's
is
what she's talking about. You put that on your sewing machine, line it
it's
up
a
with your
tape.
needle.
It's like washi tape,
Yeah.
and then it helps
It's
you.
called diagonal seam tape by Cluck Cluck Sew.
Yeah.
But other companies make it too.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, that's what you look for.
Yeah.
And it will help you. You don't even have to mark. It'll just help you sew
Right.
an accurate 1/4 inch down the center of this.
Right. And then this
square.
little tool, it helps you draw 2 lines. You put this through the middle. You don't draw a line through the middle. You're actually drawing the line that you're going to sew on. So there's lots of different ways of getting the lines on. But the object is to get a 1/4 inch away from that point and that point. So a 1/4 inch on one side, a 1/4 inch on the other side, and this is what you get. Now, I said I oversized, and that means I made it bigger than I actually needed. And this absolutely, if I had to be caught on a desert island, I could only take 3 rulers. This would be one of the 3 rulers.
What ruler is that?
This is called
That's a quilt in a day.
Quilt in a Day triangle square up ruler. It comes in 3 sizes. This happens to be the 4.5. There's a 6.5.
And
then here's the 9.5. Now you can see that mine is different than Jennifer's.
Yes.
Hers doesn't have these little teardrop things cut out of the sides. These are the older ones. This is the new revised yummy delicious one.
Yeah. They help you get rid of the dog ears.
Yes. So when we say dog ears, what we're talking about is when you open them up, if you don't cut them before you open them up, you get this little bow tie looking thing. But if you clip that off ahead of time, then you get something that looks like that without the dog ears. See that? So to get this to the right side that I want, and I think I made this 4.5, but I want it to be 3.5 actually. So my ruler has half increments on one side and whole increments on the other side. So I'm going to go 3.5. Right there's my 3.5. And there's a line across, and I'm just going to take and put that line on the stitches. the line on the stitches. Now, see, I haven't made it so big that I have a terrible waist.
No, but just enough.
But just enough that I can be accurate. That's the most important thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rotary cutter, cut there, and then take my rotary cutter and cut inside this teardrop and inside this teardrop, and then it just automatically takes the dog ears away. And now when I open this up, this is going to be 3.5 inches, but it's going to be 3 inches sewn in. Okay, so on the Thangles, you do it by the finished size. With this tool, you do it by the unfinished size. So it gets to be a little bit complicated. Just think about it. And it should say right on the package, it does say right on the package of the Thangles, that it has to be the finished size. The ruler, when you use the ruler, is the unfinished size.
You're trimming it to the size it'll be when it's pressed, but not sewn in yet.
Correct. So that's my 2 favorite ways of making half square triangles. I always use this way if I'm making quantities and if I'm just doing 1 or 2. Every time you make one out of a square, you get 2. Okay, because you're cutting it in half, right? Okay, so that's the way I do it. Let's see how you do it.
If you want to know step by step how to do the 2 at a time half square triangle process, I have a video here on my channel that will show you exactly how to do that.
Okay.
Now, my favorite method actually is the 2 at a time because I like scrappy quilts, so as you can see behind me.
Yeah.
So making 2 at a time that are exactly the same is ideal for me rather than having all of them be exactly the same.
Right, because when you use Thangles, all 6 of those are going to be the same.
Right. So it just depends on what kind of look you're going for.
Right.
But the method that I like to use is something that's just a little bit, it's a variation.
I'm going to switch you places so you can be under the...
It's a variation of the 2 at a time method, and you kind of end up making a tube of half square triangles, and it's great for very scrappy because each half square triangle turns out differently. To do it, you are going to start off by taking your, just like Dawn just showed, you're going to take your square, which is, by the way, the math is that it's 1 inch bigger than the finished size. But if you want to know the math for all of the different kinds of half square triangle processes, there is a download that you can get on my channel, so I'll link to that. Anyway, you just draw a line down the center of from corner to corner, and you're going to be sewing 1/4 of an inch on each side. So you start off by putting 2 together like this, and sewing. It's kind of a little weird. You sew only on one side. You're sewing with the line to your left, so you're sewing down here, and then when you get done, you pick this up. There. Okay. I sew like that. I pick this up, fold it back, and then lay another triangle on. Another square on top, and I sew along that line. Eventually, you will get the whole thing all together, and it will look kind of like this. If you sew the last 2 together along this line, then you'll have a tube. So then what you do is you cut each of these things between the 2 sewn lines apart, and you end up with your traditional 2 at a time half square triangle. At that point, you trim it up just like you would any other way. With this method, it's very, very fast. It's very, very scrappy, but it is a little tricky in that you've got this tube, and you want to make sure as you're cutting them apart, you're cutting on the diagonal line between and not on your sewing lines. But you just take your scissors and cut, and then you can use a rotary cutter to cut in between each of the different pairs, but I typically just use scissors. Anyway, as you can see, I'm going to get this pair is orange and purple, and then this pair is the orange and green, and then this pair is the green and another green. You should like that.
I love that one.
And then this pair is the green and blue. So you're basically sewing one to the next one in the line. And that's called the tube method for making half square triangles.
How many would you do at a time? How many layers can you go?
Oh, I usually make a tube that's a lot bigger than this little one. You could sew as many as you want, but like, 20, 30 altogether.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And anyway, so because this method is the 2 at a time method, when you're trimming up your half square triangles, and I forgot to do in my step outs to make any, but when you're trimming them up, you again can use the Quilt in a Day ruler to cut them apart. Can I borrow your?
Sure, go right ahead. One thing I did forget to say was that you don't press them open first. Go ahead and cut this one if you. Oh, there's one.
Okay, so like this one, if it was going to finish at 2.5, unfinished at 2.5, you're going to lay the ruler using the 2.5-inch line on the seam line.
Can I turn this over so you can see the thread better? There you go.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I'm putting my 2.5-inch on the seam line, and I'm taking this center line and centering it there, and then I'm going to trim these two. It's useful to have a rotating cutting mat when you're doing that.
Yeah.
And then I have the old style rulers, so to get the dog ears off, I just trim it. I just move it upside down, use my 2.5-inch line, center it like that, and trim off the dog ears. Wait a minute, let me get it. It's like you've got one dog ear there already trimmed off, and then here's the other one that you just
when
cut
you
off
use
like
the
that.
Thangles, the way that the Thangle is made, it already trims one off.
And then earlier we mentioned that with the 2 at a time method, or with the tube method, which is a variation of it, in the 2 at a time you're sewing 1/4 inch on either side of this center line. In the tube method, you're only sewing here, and then you're picking it up, and you're going to sew. You're putting another square on top, and you're sewing on the right, and you're picking up and you're sewing on the right. So that's how you do the tube method. But anyway, you can make both of those methods faster by not marking. One thing you can do if you want to mark is you can mark down the center like we already showed, and you can mark your sewing lines. Or you can use diagonal seam tape, which lines up with your needle. And then what you're doing is you're taking the point from here, and you're guiding it along this line, this black line. Your needle is here, so it's 1/4 inch away.
And your needle is here, but the tape is this way.
Yeah, the tape is
It's really not under your needle. It's just extending your
along
line
the sewing
of your
bed.
needle.
Yeah, so it extends your visual guide towards where the needle is. Let's say the needle was here. You would run your tape down your sewing bed that way.
Right.
And the way you use the product is with this point and this point, you're running it along, you're guiding it along the black line, which will make your needle 1/4 inch away, and that's how you end up sewing without marking.
Correct.
Another way to do it is to use this, which is a sewing laser. And again, if you take a look at my half square triangle videos, I've got several, one for each method, I show you how this laser works. But essentially, I'm putting the laser where I want to guide my points. So I'm putting the laser at the black line edge.
She's so high tech.
This fits on top of my sewing machine with some Velcro, and then it's got a little...
Oh, it's green!
She loves it. It's got a little switch that turns it on, and it runs by battery.
I might have to buy one just because it's green.
Vivilux. You do. You have to buy it because it's green.
No, I'm not going to buy it. I just bought new appliances for my kitchen.
So anyway, I did go through this the tube method rather fast, but that's because there's a video on my channel that shows you how to do it in more
And that's
detail.
your favorite way if you're doing scrappy.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just such a fast way.
Would you do it that way if you weren't doing scrappy?
No.
Oh, really?
If I was, well, you could,
Sure.
because you can,
every other color
every other color is the same fabric, so you could, yeah, sure. A lot of times, though, if I'm going to do like multiple by the same size, instead of the Thangles method, because I don't often have them just handy, I will use the 8 at a time method.
Oh, yes.
Which is, again, kind of a variation of 2 at a time, except you're using a larger square and you're making 8 of those. It's kind of
my
like
square? Right there.
this.
That's eight at a time.
Right. So it'll be something like that, and you're marking lines like this, and you're sewing where those arrows.
So
are
instead of
telling you,
using the paper, you're going ahead and creating the lines yourself.
You're just making
right
your own
on,
template.
Yeah, right on the fabrics with a chalk pencil.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you can bump this up even bigger and do 16 at a time. The math is the only thing that changes. The process is really the same. You just have to do a lot more marking because obviously you're going to have more squares that you're going to be sewing on. But those are some of my favorite methods for half square triangles.
Excellent.
But probably my absolute go-to would be just 2 at a time.
2 at a time. Okay.
Yeah, I just do that. And then I guess AccuQuilt.
And then
cut my
AccuQuilt.
triangles out using AccuQuilt and then just sew two
You have a
triangles
sample
together.
of that, or you have a video?
Yeah, I've got a video that shows that. So
Okay.
yeah, we'll get
Excellent.
to some AccuQuilt stuff a little bit later.
Okay.
But anyway, so that's half square triangles.
I hope you find your favorite way to do half square triangles. It's very personal, and it's just tried. You know, after a while, you just find one method that you like, and that's kind of your go-to.
Yeah.
And with each situation, it's going to be different.
Right.
Depending upon how many you have to make and the size.
And what colors, fabrics, and things you're using in your
Right.
quilt. So you have to, in my intro video for half square triangle methods, I talk about the fact that you need to take a look at your project and say how many triangles are there, how many am I making that are all the same fabric, and then choose a method that kind of suits not only your style, but also the type of quilt you're making.
Yeah.
So even though I say my favorite might be 2 at a time or the tube method, I switch to different methods depending on the project.
Right,
And I
right.
bet you do too.
Sure. But those are my two
Those are your favorite tests.
ways. Yeah. Now, I would say that in the beginning, when you very, very, very first start making quilts, you start with 4 patches and 9 patches because that's just straight sewing on straight fabric, straight edges.
Yeah.
When you go to diagonal piecing, you're actually sewing on the bias
Yeah, because when
And
you're
so-
sewing here, this is the bias
of the fabric.
of the fabric. This is the stretchiest part of the fabric.
Right.
This
So-
is not. This
so-
is very stable.
So if you're cutting that bias first, the opportunity to get the block stretched out is far greater than if you sewed it before you cut it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's probably the reason that we like to do it this way.
Yeah.
Because
even though we're sewing on the bias, it's stable
Right.
because the triangles haven't been cut apart yet.
Correct. Another kind of tip that I would have is when you're doing this method, that you would make sure I have a single hole plate on my sewing machine, but always remember you're coming over here. You're not sewing there on the point. You're not sewing on the line you drew. You're sewing over here. But sometimes it'll pull that fabric down into the feed dogs, and you don't want that. So either sew on a little scrap of fabric first,
A leader.
a leader and an ender, put one on at the end so that you have a leader for the next time, or get a single hole plate for your machine. It does make a difference.
Or do both.
or do both. Yeah, it does make a
Because even
difference.
with a single hole plate, sometimes you can get that little thread nest right at the beginning here. It just depends.
Right.
And so I always use a leader ender just because.
What's your favorite marking tool when you do mark this line? Do you have a favorite tool?
I'm laughing because most times I can mark with just a regular mechanical pencil.
Yeah.
And
Because this is your cut line, so you're never going to see it.
yeah, right. So I will just mark with just any old mechanical pencil. If the fabric is super dark, you won't be able to see this. So I will use a sew line, a chalk marker. So something that is chalk or chalk-like. I like sew line because it fits in my hand like a pencil. And that's
And it's
mine.
just like a lead, but the lead is chalk.
Yeah. Yeah, so so it's easy to if you can't brush it away, it will wash away.
Yeah.
So I'm not the least bit worried that it's not going to come out.
Right.
So I don't.
And it's not adding any chemicals.
No.
Like those disappearing pins.
Yeah, I am naturally distrustful of things. So if you're not sure about your marking device that you bought, always test it out. And because I use chalk, I don't really have to test because chalk is, I mean, we know chalk from grade school.
Yeah, did you ever eat chalk?
No.
I never did either.
I did love to clap the erasers.
Yes. I always loved the erasers. Yeah.
I don't know why, but
I would volunteer to erase the chalkboard for sure.
I know, because the smell of it, I don't know. There's something.
Oh, I don't know about the smell. I don't know.
But the dusting, I don't know. But there was something magical about that.
Yeah.
Something magical. Anyway, so you don't use those disappearing type.
No, I do not.
Yeah,
I'm like you. I don't trust those.
And I don't use the friction either.
No.
I know that they do. They're not. First of all, they weren't designed to be used on fabric.
Right.
So it's it's at your own risk.
They were designed for government signatures, weren't they? Because they disappear in heat.
Yeah, when things get hot.
Yeah.
The politicians say, I didn't sign that.
No.
Let's go, baby, go. That's why every time you visit your senator, he's got an iron. No, I'm just kidding.
No, just kidding.
Well, we digress.
Yes, we do.
But anyways, I would never use anything with chemicals anyway. But the friction pins and all that stuff, the lines can come back when the temperatures are cooler. So I'm like, I wouldn't want my lines just suddenly appearing on my quilt. So
correct.
So anyway, I don't do that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that's our favorite way to do half square triangles.
It is, and we probably mentioned between the two of us about a half dozen different ways. But anyway, my favorite is the tube method, and your favorite is the Thangles method,
or the foundation papers.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So it looks like you've taken a big triangle, and you've sewn little triangles on each side of it. Is that how you did it?
In this particular quilt, I use my favorite method, which is 4 at a time. So I will show you how I did that.
So once I have that, I take one of the sky units, the squares. I place it onto the rectangle, and I sew on the diagonal from point to point. Now on the half square triangles, you sew 1/4 of an inch away, but that's because we were sewing 2 pieces of fabric together. This, we're sewing 2 pieces of fabric together, but we want one to stay attached, and so we're going from point to point. So this is what I call a connecting corner.
I call them flip corners.
Or stitch and flip. Because you stitch and then you flip.
Then what you do is you add another sky square on top that has been marked on the diagonal, and you're going to sew 1/4 of an inch on either side there. Now keep in mind that you've got 2 of these hearts, so you're actually doing 2 of these. And we'll see you later.
Okay, bye.